Hey y'all, welcome back to another YouTube video, and today I'm doing something a little bit new, and I'm giving you guys a recap of this week's episode of Witch Hat Atelier, episode 5. I decided to do this one because this week's episode, and really all the episodes of Witch Hat Atelier so far have been phenomenal, and I feel like over on TikTok I just don't have enough time to actually talk about everything I've liked in the episode, everything that I want to talk about that might have been changed, or like might have implications for the manga, or things that are different like stylistic choices that were made. And just talking about like all the elements that I liked. Also, TikTok's doing like really weird stuff with AI these days, so like it might just be better to start moving over to YouTube and doing more stuff on YouTube. But yeah, I'm gonna start doing these recaps weekly, hopefully, if I can keep up with it, and maybe it'll become a thing on this channel. But without further ado, let's get into this week's episode of Witch Hat Today. Okay, so I have my notes here just because, quite frankly, without them, I would get kind of lost trying to talk about this episode because there is so much to talk about. And from a story perspective, I was really excited to see this episode just because this is the first time we get to see the core four act in tandem with each other. Like, you get to see Coco, Agat, Riche, and Tetsuya all working together to accomplish a goal, and it's really sweet. Especially after how the last episode ended, with Coco being in dire straits, both emotionally and mentally, blaming herself for this, having Agat blame her for it, having Tetsuya look at her like this whole situation is her fault. And I really like that, like, the opening scene really captures, like, her kind of, like, empathy even in this kind of situation, because she's been holding Tetsuya's hat this whole time as they've been trying to run through this maze and get out of here. But when they finally find a spot to rest, she like gives her hat back and then tries to take off her own cloak to give it to Tetsuya because she feels stronger when she's wearing it and she wants Tetsuya to feel that way. And Tetsuya's like, oh my gosh, like I feel so terrible because like I'm your senior, I'm supposed to be the one protecting you, like I shouldn't have looked at you like that. And then she like casts her like really nice like fluffy spell that she kind of dreams of making official magic one day, like soft, warm, sleeping on a floating cloud type deal. Type of things that a really outgoing and sweet 12-year-old girl would think of as a spell to give to the world, essentially. But the whole thing is that the dragon is still a problem because it is simply just walking around getting bigger, and that's really concerning because, as Coco brings up, much to I guess dismay, that fire spell just seemed to kind of make it mad and didn't really do any damage. So they're trying to figure out ideas for how to deal with this thing, and this is where I'm saying, like, one of my favorite parts about Coco, first of all, her creativity, but also like just the whimsy that she has when coming up with her ideas. Because most people are like, okay, how do we defeat the dragon? Like, how do we get it out of here? How do we kill it? How do we beat it? And Coco, after having spent time in Tetsuya's spell, is like, actually, why don't we just like make the dragon a bed like with this thing and put it to sleep? Because it seems like it's it hit its nose earlier, like it might be tired, it might be cranky, let's make it a bed. And everyone's kind of like, oh, that maybe that could work. And then I got started trying to like work it out in her head, basically, because at this point she's at her wits end. She doesn't really know she doesn't know how to solve this issue, especially like she's very comfortable, I think, bringing up like flaws in other people, hence why she's okay with like kind of like shouting at Coco in the previous episode, and also just kind of like because she is objectively kind of the star student of the atelier at this point. And but when Coco brings up to her like, hey, that spell didn't really work, she's like, huh, like, what are you saying? So like it's one of those things where it's like she's not super open to criticism, and that's because of her own like upbringing and whatnot. But like she's also not very open to praise, because when she's trying to work it out, everyone's like, oh my god, like, I got, how do we make this work? How do we make this work? Like, we need you to, like, smarty, like, you're the smarty pants of the group. And she's like, oh my god, like, she's not, she's also very not open to praise, which is another reason I kind of like her and like kind of resonate with her a lot. But you really get to see like her more vulnerable side, being not being able to take criticism entirely well, but also not being able to take praise entirely well, which is really nice to kind of see. But the girls work together to like plan out how to cast this spell on a scale that would work on a dragon. However, they're kind of still they're having trouble with the idea of like, how do we have it maintain its consistency, right? Like, how do you have it maintain its fluffiness? And the whole time, basically, Coco wasn't really allowed to work on this because she came up with the idea, but not practiced enough where Aga can trust her to draw parts of the spell, right? And make this thing work, because she still is a novice. But she's been practicing in the corner because she saw some of the other girls drawing circles, which is another amazing part of this, this adaptation, is like her seeing, and it's a bit different from the manga how it happens, but like she sees them draw like these like how they go about drawing circles perfectly, and goes on to practice drawing the pirate ball, which she's been having trouble with, and she finally gets it right. And she mentions like when they're congratulating her, she mentions, oh yeah, it's just like a little bit of like repetition, or like Agat's like, well, yeah, you can do anything with repetition. And then she gets it. She's like, wait a minute, we add like repetition to the spell, right? And that will allow it to like basically cycle and keep maintaining that consistency even if the dragon lays on top of it. And then we get this like really amazing sequence afterwards, where like there's a lot of really great animation in specifically the back half of this episode, but this part where the girls are like moving from roof to roof, running through this maze, the city, drawing like the spells on the tops of buildings, while avoiding the eyesight of the dragon, is amazing. Like it builds tension in a way that like an action scene almost does, even though there's no actual fighting, but like they're almost battling in a way of like bringing their creativity into the spell and like trying to enact their plan, which is also really interesting because like I don't know, it just elevates it to another level, right? Because like especially when you throw the OC on top of it, like this is like the composer for the series has worked on Elden Ring, right? Which has a phenomenal soundtrack. So I mean, obviously expecting really great things throughout the series, but like the track here, amazing. Like just seeing everything, come together, seeing them kind of like coordinate with each other across these rooftops, signaling each other with hats on when to like actually start the spell, so that everything's simultaneous. And it's just such a good scene. Like it's perfect. It's just so perfectly put together that I just have no notes. I've watched it like a few times already, and I'm probably gonna watch it again after this video now that I'm talking about it. But quite frankly, it is just a really good instance of animation, and showing the concentration, showing the dedication, showing like the ingenuity of the girls. And then the girls activate the spell, which also really cool activation of like them sealing the circle and all them going like off the roof, basically, essentially, like with their hands, and like finishing drawing the seal. The spell activates, right? And is able to pacify the dragon, and we get this really funny, cute moment of like Coco and Tetia both trying to name the spell and calling it the dragon disabling cushion, essentially. And Akat's like, no, that's wrong. Like it's the serpent bed of sand. And then again calling her very smart. And she's like, oh my god, like let's just go find the seal. That's the reason we're in here, because Coco had seen it earlier, and pointed it out to them, and is like, yeah, actually, like that's where we need to go. And that's why they needed to pacify the dragon, because the dragon's guarding it. And while all this is happening, right, Kifri is kind of searching for the girls around the city, trying to find out where they went. And him and Tartha eventually find this alleyway that Tartha's like, this was paved before. Kifri tries to lift a rock. And at the same time, I guess Tetsuya is erasing the seal on the side of the tower that they're on. And, there's an explosion, basically. It opens up like a kind of like portal hole for Kifri to be able to teleport to where they are, essentially. And he goes through it, but all that commotion kind of wakes up the dragon, because like I guess the teleportation spell isn't exactly like it's not exactly subtle. Okay, like I mean, there's like the wind's blowing, whipping around, like everything's going crazy once that teleportation spell opens up again, right? And this is another really great moment that I think was in the for this specific part. Like honestly, from this point on, it was just peak moments after moment. But the dragon's woken up, right, and it's attacking them again, and you have Agat trying to like get Coco out of the way. She's like, oh my god, get down. And dragon hits the tower, but Agat's falling off the tower because she's part of it broke off, and you've got Coco like reaching out to her, which is a parallel to something that I'm guessing we're going to see later in this season, potentially. Actually, given the pacing, I don't know how because this is all in chapter 7, I believe. So we're on episode 5. So like the pacing has been immaculate, but I actually don't know how far we're gonna get moving at this pace. Which I'm not complaining, but I have to go check when certain things happen in the manga again before like stating that clearly. But essentially, feels like it'll be a callback to something else, or a call forward to something else that might happen for manga readers, and a call back for anime onlys that will see it eventually. and Agat's falling, and then we have Kiefer swooping in with the MVP. Listen, this is the other thing, is that in the manga, this is only like, I believe, 2-3 pages, and it's not nearly as flashy like what he's doing essentially. But he swoops in, catches Agat, saves her, gets her out of the way of the dragon, and then we see him cast the water dragon spell. And I was so excited to see the water dragon spell, just because like the water dragon spell it's one of my favorites that I've seen in the series. I really enjoy seeing it whenever it's cast. I love the way it's drawn when Shirahama draws it. But the way it was animated just took my breath away. Like seeing that spell come to life, seeing like Kiefer clear the clouds, seeing like the golden water and everything just come together and just make this massive dragon that is several times bigger than it appeared in the manga and several times bigger than the actual dragon itself. And then come crashing down and attack this dragon and basically knock it out and put an end to that. And you get this really nice scene after that happens where Kiefer's like counting the girls. He's like, because Tetsuya and Rish come floating over to him because they have sylph shoes, and you can literally see him in the scene. He's like, you can see him counting like a mom. He's like 1, 2, 3, and it's like, wait a minute, there's a fourth girl that I'm not that's missing here. Lo and behold, fourth girl is this is another amazing animated scene. Like I'm talking about, like it was just hit after hit, guys. It was truly one of the greatest episodes I've ever seen. But like this, basically Coco is in this kind of like monochrome alternate space with Igwin, actually, because Igwin is holding Coco. And the shot is inverted as well, which is really nice play on words, because whenever brim hats are drawn in the manga, they usually like especially like brim hat Coco, like they're almost like always like in like brim hat Coco and Coco are almost always like inverted from each other essentially. But whenever like brim hats are drawn, it's kind of like they're shown as being the opposite of this. And so like basically like the world is upside down when Igwin like lets her go after saying like, oh yeah, like I planted like, oh like I'm so happy to see the seed I planted sprout, and I can teach you things that Kiefer can't. And I'm gonna leave you a gift, basically, and letting her go. And like she's like rising up towards like the sea, which is like kind of the ceiling at this point. And we get another really interesting thing that I noticed, and then I saw some other people notice as well, because I wasn't sure if I was just seeing things. But we get Coco's hat kind of like Igwin floats, kind of like, I guess it would be downwards. I don't know. But you see like kind of like ink blotting, like blotting them out basically. And then it like basically becomes like the dark like circle basically within Coco's hat, and the hat falls into the screen. Everything fades to black, and people are like, "Oh my god, were they like inside her hat, or like did they teleport again?" And quite frankly, I think that's a really good, that's a really good point, because we know Brush Buddy loves to coil up around Coco's hat, especially like in those earlier episodes. So like, and they're attracted to ink. Like brush buddies are attracted to magical ink. So entirely plausible that somehow, some way that happened. I can't confirm that. I'm not gonna say much about that. But yeah, I mean that was the whole thing for that. And then eventually Coco wakes up. They're back in the city. She has this moment where like, oh, by the way, for Igwin as well, I also want to shout out Erin Nico Lundquist, I believe is how her name is pronounced. Her voice acting in the dub, phenomenal. Loved it. Like I just love the way that she speaks as Igwin. And actually, like on Instagram, she was talking about how she like gets in the mood to like voice act for them, and she was saying that she actually does the voice acting barefoot because she believes that Igwin has such a light presence, almost like almost a carefree presence. And I'm like, that's actually, this is why voice acting is like it really is like acting. You know what I mean? It's like it's just great. I don't know. I love it. But going back to what I was saying before, we get back to the city essentially, and like Coco is waking up, which there's another really nice anime original touch here that was kind of like, I like it. So essentially, when Coco wakes up in the manga, she wakes up on the ground, sits up. But in the anime, when she wakes up, there's actually 2 cloaks under her, and you see that like Aga and Rish have taken off their cloaks and put them under Coco, so she's not actually like laying on the ground, which is really sweet. Like that's a nice touch. I love it when anime adaptations can take things from the manga and like change them around to do that sort of thing. So I really enjoyed that, seeing that. I was like, that's sweet. I love that. And she's just crying about like the fact that she blames herself for this, and we get like a cut to Agat, who kind of flinches at this because she realizes that she really said some hurtful stuff, and that it wasn't right to say that about her, especially since it was her idea that ended up getting them out of this. And like Kiefer brings that up to her and is like, your idea really did save the day, to be honest, and that's like a talent we have to cultivate essentially. And then he kind of walks off and lets the girls kind of have their moment together. And then he's talking to Nonoa about like the ink that was used for the spell in the city to teleport the girls. And he's like, yeah, can you examine this? Because we know Nonoa is like the ink guy. He's the ink man. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I can do that. And Kiefer's like, yeah, but don't tell the Knights of Morales. And Nolan's like, but we have like a duty to inform the like everyone about like forbidden magic. And then we get an amazing sequence. Not exactly the first sequence in the anime, but one of the first where we really see that there's something up with Kiefer for the anime onlys, because he's like, tell no one of this, and like the look on his face, it's just phenomenal, and especially the way that like the ending theme is playing throughout this. And if you've heard the ending theme, it's kind of whimsical, it's kind of light, but the ending theme just stops, and like the voice acting, there's just no music, no nothing, just Kiefer's voice. And I just want to say that, quite frankly, Joshua Waters, you did an amazing job with that. Like, I got chills when I watched the dub. That was phenomenal. I could not ask for more for that. Like, that was a perfect way to cap off that episode. I saw a lot of anime only freaking out about it because they're like, whoa, wait a minute. And I'm like, yeah. yeah. The thing about Witch Hat Atelier that really, I love is that it's got the whimsy, but it also has some really dark elements to it, which is really nice. But that was a phenomenal episode, and I can see why it was Satoshi Nanoko's favorite episode, because they did like, I think, an interview or like a behind the scenes thing where he was saying, this is my favorite episode. They had like 2 full, like, not binders, but like stacks of basically storyboards for this thing. So like you can tell there was a lot of love and detail put into this, from like I said, the dust in the air, literally. But yeah, phenomenal episode, and my mind's blown. Like, I feel like that raised the bar for everyone, really, but it's like I said, one of them ones, right? Okay, so I don't want to end the video without talking about the dragon, because there is some and manga spoilers here. So if you are an anime only, I am literally begging you to skip ahead to the outro or just close the video, and thanks for watching. But I'm gonna get into some manga stuff here right now, really quickly, and that could deep spoilers, basically, like big spoilers. So you don't want to hear any of this if you want to experience the series how it should be experienced. You've been warned. So obviously the dragon, a lot of people have been talking about, that like when Kiefer drew the dragon and we saw the spell come to life, was his blood involved with the ink, right? Because we had the previous episode where we were talking about how the Silverwood tree's blood is used to make magical ink, and essentially when the dragon's coming to life, you see that red spiral around the water, essentially, and it goes into what it becomes the dragon's mouth, brings the spell to life, and you can kind of see like the red flowing through it a little bit, or like just inside the dragon, essentially. So everyone's like, oh my god, did he use his own blood in the spell, or like is his blood in the ink, right? And I definitely think it's possible, given the fact that we know blood magic, or like ink in blood, amplifies the power of a spell. As we know, or as the anime onlys will find out, but as the manga readers know, when Coco is using ink that is infused with Igwin's blood, it basically makes her spells that she draws much more powerful, because that's kind of how it works. And the thing is, though, I'm unsure, just because I think we know it's also volatile if you don't know what you're doing with it. And I'm not saying Kiefer wouldn't know what he's doing with it. Like, if he chooses to use that thing, right, like obviously he knows what he's doing. But it is kind of shown both with Coco using the ink that has Igwin's blood in it, and then also some stuff later that introducing blood and ink together to make a spell makes the spell extremely powerful, but also extremely volatile and hard to control. So I don't know if he would use that in this scenario, but also, I mean, he probably knows that Brimhat's involved and he hates Brimhat, so he might just forego caution and just do whatever. We don't know. But he also really, really cares about those girls, so despite the ulterior motive that we know he has. So yeah, I mean, there's that. But it also could not be the blood, because people are calling out like the red, right? Like, oh my god, it's red like blood. But we also know that the ink that Igwin is infusing with blood and giving to Coco isn't red in color. Like, I think it's not like this. It's not like as dark as regular ink. I think it's actually like a little lighter, is what the color is described as being. So there's a difference in color, but it's not like red is the thing. It's like, it's not like something you would spot and be like, that ink's got blood in it, essentially. So it's entirely possible that like it's not blood, but even then, I could see Shirahama and the staff at Bug Films kind of like doing this to like evoke thoughts from manga readers and even anime onlys who are seeing that and having like been perceptive enough to pick up on the Silverwood kind of like story in the previous episode. Um, and you know, give them that imagery basically, and like make them think like, oh, maybe is there something else going on here? Uh, and I, you know, I could really see them messing with their heads like that. And even, you know, whether it was blood or just an artistic choice, it looks phenomenal. It looks badass. Like I'm not gonna complain about it. But yeah, I mean, that's my thought on the blood debate. I don't know if it's blood or not. Could be, could not. But again, looks great. Okay, and that concludes the recap. Thanks for sitting through that and watching it. I'm hoping to do this for more episodes of Witch Hat Atelier for sure in the future, and maybe other series as well. Like obviously, trying to do these in the middle of the week when I have a job. Like the episode aired on Monday, and I'm going to try and get this out by the end of the week, hopefully. We'll see. But obviously, you know, trying to put these out in the middle of the week with a job and everything is like a bit difficult. So I probably will never do like multiple shows, but like maybe each season I'll pick a show that I really like and just kind of like make recap episodes for it if this takes off. And maybe it'll just be Witch Hat Atelier and like Free Run and Apothecary Diaries and like other shows that I already know that I like and that I'm really invested in, and that I've, you know, read the mangas for. But and light novels for and like whatnot for the other series like 86. But yeah, I don't know, we'll see how this works out. But I really enjoyed this video. I thought it was really fun, and I got to yap for even longer than I do on TikTok. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully there will be a next one in this series. But if not, I'll see you in the next video.